The stars looked peaceful that morning. Taehyun Park stood by the window of the orbital station, watching Earth spin slowly below. He had worked as a diplomat for 20 years. In all that time, humanity had been alone in space. No aliens, no other voices calling from distant worlds. Just humans, spreading quietly across their small corner of the galaxy. Taehyun touched the communication device on his wrist. It buzzed with an urgent message. His hands felt cold suddenly. "Sir, we have contact," the voice said. It was Daewon Kim, the officer who watched the outer edges of the solar system. They just appeared near Neptune, a fleet, not ours. For a moment, Taehyun could not speak. First contact, the moment every human had wondered about. But Daewon's voice carried no excitement, only worry. "How many ships?" Taehyun asked. "Over 300. Large ones. They are moving toward us." Taehyun ran to the command center. Other diplomats were already gathering. Mira Choi, the general in charge of Earth's defense, appeared on the main screen. Her face looked serious but calm. "We are getting messages from them," Mira said. "The translation computer is working on their language now." Everyone waited. The room felt too quiet. Then words appeared on the screen, simple words that made Taehyun's heart sink. "You will surrender. You will obey. Resistance means death." Hana Yoon, the scientist who studied alien life, stepped forward. She had gray hair and kind eyes, but now those eyes looked worried. "We need to respond carefully," she said. "We do not know them yet. Maybe they can be reasoned with." The aliens agreed to meet. They called themselves the Valix. When their leader appeared on the screen, humans saw a creature unlike anything from Earth. Tall, covered in dark scales, with eyes that looked cold and empty of mercy. "This was Warlord Thex Van. I am Thex Van," the alien said. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "The Valix Empire has claimed 47 worlds. You will be the 48th. You have one of your days to accept our terms." Taehyun stood up. His legs felt weak, but his voice stayed steady. "We do not want war," he said. "But you should know something about humanity. We are peaceful now because we choose to be, not because we have to be." Thex Van made a sound. It took a moment for humans to realize he was laughing. "Peaceful," the warlord said. "I see no weapons. I see no warships. I see fear. You threaten me with words because you have nothing else." Hana stepped forward then. She brought up images on the screen. Old pictures from Earth's history. Cities burning. Mushroom clouds rising. Weapons that could destroy entire continents. "This is what we were," she said quietly. "We almost destroyed ourselves. We built weapons that could end all life on our planet. Then we made a choice. We put those weapons away. We chose peace. But the weapons still exist. The knowledge still exists. We are warning you. Do not make us remember what we were." The warlord looked at the images. Then he laughed harder. "Old pictures," he said. "Ancient history. You show me what your ancestors did and expect me to fear?" The Valix conquered the Telari, who had weapons. The Valix crushed the Brecken, who had armies. You have nothing but memories and fear. The screen went dark. The Valix had ended the call. Mira spoke first. "They will attack." "We need to prepare. Can we fight them?" someone asked. The general looked at her hands. "Yes, but it will cost us. It will cost us everything we have tried to be for the last 100 years." That night, Soo Jin Lee sat in her ship, the Morning Star. She was a civilian pilot, carrying supplies to the mining stations near Jupiter. The radio crackled to life with an emergency message. "All civilians evacuate immediately. The mining stations are under attack." Soo Jin looked out her window. In the distance, she saw bright flashes of light. Then nothing. 3 mining stations gone in seconds. Her hands gripped the controls. "This is Morning Star," she said into the radio. "I am close to Station 7. There are workers there. I am going to get them. Negative, Morning Star. It is too dangerous." But Soo Jin was already moving. The Morning Star was not fast, but she pushed the engines hard. She reached Station 7 just as Valix ships appeared. The aliens fired warning shots. Soo Jin loaded 12 workers into her ship and ran. Behind her, Station 7 exploded. The workers in her ship were crying. Some were injured. All of them were terrified. Back on the orbital station, Taehyun watched the reports come in. The Valix were destroying everything in their path. They were showing their strength, proving they could hurt humanity whenever they wanted. He called Thex Van again. This time the warlord looked pleased with himself, "You see?" Thex Van said. "You are nothing. Surrender now and we will let some of you live as slaves. Resist and we will kill you all. Taehyun felt anger rising inside him. But he kept his voice calm. He needed to try one more time. This is your second warning, he said slowly, clearly. We do not want to fight. But we will if you force us. You do not understand what you are doing. You do not know what we are capable of. Tex Van smiled, showing sharp teeth. Capable? You are capable of dying. That is all. I will give you 12 hours. Then we will take your colonies. Then we will take your Earth. And you will learn what it means to face the Velix Empire. The screen went dark again. Mira stood up. Her face looked different now, harder, older. We warned them, she said, twice. They laughed both times. Now we have no choice. Wake up the Reaper fleet. Activate the old weapons. Call Taeyang Shin and tell him to power up everything we buried on the moon. Hana looked shocked. Are you sure? Those systems have been sleeping for over a century. If we wake them up, there is no going back. We become what we were. We become the thing we spent generations trying to forget. I know, Mira said quietly, but they left us no choice. We warned them. They laughed. Now they will learn why humanity chose peace. It was not because we were weak. It was because we knew what we could do if we ever stopped holding back. In a hidden base on the moon, Taeyang Shin received the orders. His hand shook as he read them. He had worked at this base for 15 years, maintaining systems that he prayed would never be used. Ancient weapons, terrible machines, the ghosts of humanity's violent past, kept alive but sleeping. Now it was time to wake them up. The activation codes scrolled across his screen. One by one he entered them. Deep below the moon's surface, lights began to glow. Engines started to hum. 300 ships built for war and nothing else began their wake-up sequence. The Reaper fleet was coming back to life, and the Velix, who had laughed at humanity's warnings, had no idea what was about to happen. 48 hours. That was all humanity had. 48 hours for the old systems to wake up completely. 48 hours before the Reaper fleet would be ready to fight. The Velix did not wait. On the morning of the second day, 3 human colonies came under attack. New Jeju was hit first. The planet was home to 2 million people, most of them farmers and scientists. They had no military bases. No weapons. Just homes and fields and research stations. Hyunwoo Park was having breakfast with his daughter when the sirens started. He was a colonel in the reserves, meaning he had military training but had not fought in years. He worked as a teacher now. But when he heard those sirens, old instincts took over. Get to the shelter, he told his family. Do not come out until I say it is safe. His daughter grabbed his hand. Where are you going? To help, he said simply. Outside, the sky was burning. Felix warships hung in the atmosphere, firing down at civilian areas. Hyunwoo could not understand it. Military targets would make sense. But these aliens were hitting schools, homes, hospitals. They wanted to cause fear and pain. Other reserve soldiers were gathering at the old command post. 23 people, most of them middle-aged like Hyunwoo. They had simple weapons, nothing that could hurt a Velix warship, but they could fight ground troops if the aliens landed. Borahan, the communication officer, was trying to reach Earth. Her hands moved fast across the controls, sending out emergency signals. Are they responding? Hyunwoo asked. Yes, Bora said. General Choi says help is coming. We just need to hold on for 30 more hours. 30 hours. It sounded like forever. The Velix began landing. Huge transport ships touched down in the farming valleys. Hundreds of alien soldiers poured out, heavily armed and armored. They moved through the colony with terrible efficiency, destroying anything in their path. Hyunwoo and his small group of fighters used guerrilla tactics. They knew every hill, every building, every hidden path. They would strike fast, then disappear before the Velix could respond. It was not enough to stop the invasion, but it slowed them down. Every hour they bought meant more civilians could escape to the underground shelters. On Earth, Taehyun watched the battle through satellite feeds. His hands clenched into fists. He felt helpless. Talking had been his weapon his whole life. Words and diplomacy. Now words meant nothing. Hana sat beside him. She was watching casualty reports scroll across a screen. Hundreds dead already. Thousands wounded. We tried. Taehyun said quietly. We gave them every chance, I know, Hana replied. But knowing that does not make this easier. On the moon, Taeyang Shin watched progress bars fill slowly on his screens. The Reaper fleet was waking up, but these were complex machines that had been asleep for over a century. Every system needed to be checked. Every weapon needed to be calibrated. Rush it and they might fail in battle. His team worked without sleeping. Engineers ran from one console to another. Mechanics crawled through the massive warships, repairing what time had damaged. Everyone knew that people were dying while they worked. That knowledge made them move faster. Admiral Kyung-Soo Lee arrived at the moon base. He was an old man now, retired from active service, but he had commanded warships once back when humanity still had them. Now he was being asked to command again. He walked through the hangar looking at the Reaper fleet. The ships were massive, black, covered in weapons. They looked like nightmares made of metal. How long? He asked Tai Yang. 22 hours until full combat readiness, the engineer replied. The admiral nodded slowly. Make it 18. People are dying. Tai Yang looked at his screens, calculating. It would be risky. Some systems might not be fully tested, but the admiral was right. Every hour mattered. We will do it, he said. Back on New Jeju, the situation was getting desperate. The Veliks had taken control of most of the colony. Only a few pockets of resistance remained. Hyunwoo and his fighters were running low on ammunition and energy. They were hiding in an old warehouse when Bora received a transmission. Her face went pale as she listened. What is it? Hyunwoo asked. The Veliks are threatening to destroy the main shelter. 3,000 civilians are inside. They say they will kill everyone unless we surrender. The room went silent. Everyone looked at Hyunwoo. He was the ranking officer. The decision was his. He thought of his daughter in the shelter. His wife, his neighbors. 3,000 people counting on him. Tell them we surrender, he said, the words tasting like poison. But as Bora reached for the transmitter, another voice came through the radio. A voice from space. Attention all colonial forces. This is Admiral Lee. The Reaper fleet is launching. Hold your positions. Help is coming. Hyunwoo felt something he had not felt in days. Hope. How long until they arrive? He asked Bora. She checked her instruments. 6 hours. Hyunwoo looked at his tired fighters. 6 hours. We can do 6 hours. He picked up his weapon again. Tell the Veliks we need time to consider their offer. Tell them we will give our answer in 6 hours. In space, the Reaper fleet was moving. 300 warships, ancient but still deadly, formed up around the moon. Admiral Lee stood on the bridge of the flagship looking at the tactical displays. The Veliks had over 2,000 ships in the solar system. They outnumbered humanity 6-1. But Admiral Lee was not worried about numbers. The Reapers were built for one purpose, to win battles against impossible odds. Every weapon system was designed to kill. Every piece of armor was meant to endure. These ships did not carry diplomats or scientists. They carried death. Daewon Kim, the intelligence officer, was now working with the fleet. He had studied the Veliks for days, learning their tactics, their weaknesses, their patterns. He knew how they thought. That knowledge would help humanity strike where it would hurt most. Admiral, target analysis is complete. Daewon reported. The Veliks command ships are positioned here, here, and here. If we take those out first, their fleet will lose coordination. The Admiral studied the positions. It was a good plan. Risky, but good. Set course for the first command ship, he ordered. All weapons free. No warning shots. We hit them with everything. On the Veliks flagship, Strategic Overseer Krell Vax was enjoying his victory. 3 human colonies were under control. Resistance was minimal. Soon Earth itself would fall. The conquest of the 48th world was going exactly as planned. Then his sensor officer shouted an alarm. Unknown vessels emerging from behind the human moon. Hundreds of them! Krell Vax looked at the screen. His blood went cold. Those ships were massive, heavily armed, moving with military precision. Where had they come from? All ships, defensive positions, he ordered. Prepare to engage. But the human fleet did not wait. They struck first, fast and brutal. Weapons that the Veliks had never seen before tore through shields like they were paper. The first command ship exploded before it could even raise its defenses. Soo-Jin Lee, the civilian pilot from the mining station, had volunteered to fly a fighter. She was not trained for combat, but she knew how to fly, and right now humanity needed every pilot they had. She launched from the Reaper flagship with 50 other fighters. Their job was to protect the big ships and strike at smaller Veliks vessels. Her hands were shaking. She was terrified. But she thought of the workers she had saved, the station that had been destroyed. Her fear turned into something else. Determination. The battle spread across the solar system. The Velix tried to regroup, tried to use their numerical advantage. But the Reaper fleet was not like any enemy they had faced. Every shot was precise. Every maneuver was calculated. The humans fought like they had been doing this for centuries. In truth, they had. The knowledge was old, buried in historical archives and military computers. But it was still there. Humanity remembered how to wage war. They had just chosen not to, until now. On New Jeju, Hyunwoo and his fighters heard explosions in the sky. They looked up to see Velix ships burning, falling from orbit. Then they saw new ships, human ships. The Reaper fleet had arrived. The Velix ground troops received new orders: retreat immediately. Their commanders were panicking. The ground forces tried to get back to their transport ships, but Hyunwoo and his resistance fighters were ready. They hit the aliens from every direction, making their retreat costly. When the last Velix transport lifted off, leaving hundreds of their dead behind, Hyunwoo fell to his knees. Exhaustion, relief, horror at what he had done. All of it crashed over him at once. Bora knelt beside him. "We won," she said softly. Hyunwoo looked at the burning buildings around them, at the bodies in the streets. "Both human and alien, did we?" he asked. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the Velix fleet was broken. 2/3 of their ships were destroyed or disabled. The survivors were running, fleeing back toward their own territory. Admiral Lee stood on his bridge, watching the enemy retreat. His fleet had won. They had saved the colonies. But the cost was visible on every face around him. These were people who had spent their entire lives in peace. Now they had blood on their hands. Total casualties? The Admiral asked quietly. A young officer checked her screen. 8,000 civilian deaths, 12 colonies damaged, 14 Reaper ships lost, 347 crew members killed in action. The Admiral closed his eyes. So many. Too many. Daewon approached him. "Sir, we are picking up communications from the Velix fleet. They are in chaos. Some want to continue fighting, others want to surrender. They are arguing with each other." The Admiral thought for a moment. This was a critical decision. Let them go and they might come back stronger. Chase them, and more people would die. What was the right choice? Back on Earth, the Security Council was meeting. Tae-hyun sat at the table feeling like he had aged 10 years in the last few days. President Sung-hee Nam stood at the head of the table looking at everyone. "We have a choice to make," she said. "We can let the Velix go home, or we can follow them and end this threat permanently." "Let them go," Tae-hyun argued. "We have proven our point. We defended ourselves. If we chase them across the galaxy, we become the aggressors. We become what they are." General Mira shook her head. "With respect, Ambassador, that is idealistic thinking. The Velix only respect strength. If we let them retreat without consequences, they will see it as weakness. They will rebuild and come back." Intelligence Officer Young Hee Oh spoke up. "I have been studying Velix culture. The General is correct. They have conquered 47 worlds. Every time a species fought back but did not finish the war, the Velix returned with more forces. Complete victory is the only language they understand." Hana looked troubled. "So we must destroy them? All of them? That would make us genocidal." "No," Mira said. "We must defeat them so completely that they have no choice but to accept peace. We must show them that humans are not prey. We must make them understand that attacking us was the worst mistake they ever made." The vote was close. But in the end, the decision was made. The Reaper fleet would pursue the Velix back to their home system, not to destroy them, but to force an unconditional surrender. Admiral Lee received his orders. He did not like them, but he understood them. He ordered the fleet to follow the retreating Velix. Su Jin was still flying her fighter. She was exhausted, running on stimulants and adrenaline. When she heard they were going after the Velix, she felt conflicted. Part of her wanted revenge for what the aliens had done. Another part was horrified at the idea of more killing. The chase took them through 3 star systems. Along the way, they encountered something unexpected. Other species. Aliens who had been conquered by the Valix decades ago. The first contact came near a gas giant. Day 1 detected strange signals. Not Velix. Something else. Admiral Lee ordered a small ship to investigate. Diplomat Si-Jin Rhee volunteered to make contact. She was young, nervous, but determined to do her job. The aliens called themselves the Talari. They were small, peaceful creatures with large eyes and gentle voices. They were hiding in an asteroid field, refugees from their own world. "Please," their leader said through the translation device. "Please do not hurt us. We have nothing left." Si-Jin felt her heart break. "We are not here to hurt you. We are humans. We are fighting the Valix too." The Talari leader stared at her. "Fighting the Valix? But they are too powerful. No one can fight them and win." "We did," Si-Jin said quietly. "We won." The Talari began to cry. They told their story. 40 years ago, the Valix had come to their world. The Talari tried to negotiate to find peace. The Valix laughed at them. Then the Valix killed 60% of their population. The survivors were enslaved. Some escaped and had been hiding ever since. Hana listened to the story through the communication link. Her hands were shaking. The Valix had done this to 17 species. Billions of lives destroyed. Entire civilizations erased. She thought about her earlier words, about not wanting humanity to become monsters. But what about the monsters that already existed? Did humanity have a responsibility to stop them? The Talari had one request. "Please, do not make peace with the Valix. Do not let them continue existing as they are. They will only hurt more people. They cannot be trusted. They do not understand mercy or honor. They only understand force." Admiral Lee made a decision. The Reaper fleet would continue, but now it was not just about defending humanity. It was about justice for all the species the Valix had destroyed. The fleet arrived at the Valix home system 2 days later. The planet Velixar hung in space, surrounded by defense platforms and military stations. The remnants of the Valix fleet had joined with their home defense forces. Now the humans faced over 2,000 enemy ships. Strategic Overseer Krelvax was now in command of the Valix military. Warlord Thexvan had been captured when his command ship was destroyed. Krelvax was smarter, more careful. He had studied the human tactics. He knew his people were in trouble, but he had one advantage. Millions of slaves and prisoners were held on Velixar. He sent a message to the human fleet. "Attack us, and we will kill them all. Every Talari, every Brecken, every slave we have ever taken. Their blood will be on your hands." Admiral Lee read the message. His jaw tightened. This was the moment he had been dreading. He could destroy the Valix fleet easily, but millions of innocents would die. He contacted Earth. President Nam and the Security Council discussed options for hours. Some wanted to attack anyway, arguing that the Valix would kill the prisoners regardless. Others wanted to negotiate, to find a way to save the hostages. Taiyang Xin proposed a different solution. A demonstration. Something that would show the Valix exactly how powerful humanity was, without killing millions of innocents. "What do you have in mind?" the Admiral asked. "The moons," Taiyang said. "Velixar has 3 moons. All of them are military bases, but none have large populations. If we destroy the moons, we show them we could destroy their planet just as easily, but we choose not to." Hana objected. "Destroying 3 moons? That is still an act of terrible violence." "Yes," Taiyang agreed. "But it is violence against rocks and metal, not against living beings. It sends a message. We are powerful enough to end you, but we are also restrained enough not to." The plan was approved. Admiral Lee gave the orders with a heavy heart. This was not war as he understood it. This was something darker. Psychological warfare. Terror. The Reaper fleet positioned itself carefully. They evacuated the few Valix personnel on the moons first, giving them time to escape. Then they fired. The weapons they used were called relativistic kinetic impactors. Metal projectiles accelerated to nearly the speed of light. When they hit, the energy release was equivalent to nuclear weapons. But there was no radiation, no fallout, just pure destructive force. The first moon shattered in 6 hours. The second took 8, the third took 10. Each one was reduced to debris and dust. The Valix watched from their planet, horrified. These objects had existed for billions of years. The humans destroyed them in a single day. Sujin watched from her fighter. She felt sick. Yes, the moons were military targets. Yes, they had evacuated the personnel. But still, destroying moons. What had humanity become? When the last moon was dust, Admiral Lee sent a message to Krell-Vax. "This is what we can do. We could do the same to your planet. We could turn Velixar into asteroids, but we will not. Because we are not like you. We do not want genocide. We want peace. Real peace. Surrender now. Free the prisoners. Dismantle your military. Accept oversight from a coalition of the species you have hurt. Do this and you live. Refuse and you die. You have 12 hours to decide." On Velixar, chaos erupted. Many Valix wanted to keep fighting. They would rather die than surrender. But others, including younger Valix who had never wanted this war, saw the truth. They were beaten. Completely. Utterly. Without question. A civil war began among the Valix themselves. Admiral Thex Vin, younger sibling of the captured warlord, led those who wanted to surrender. He fought against Krell-Vax's loyalists. After 8 hours of fighting, Thex Vin won. He sent a message to the humans. "We accept your terms. We surrender. Please, no more death." Admiral Lee received the message. He felt no joy, no triumph, only exhaustion and sadness. They had won, but at what cost to humanity's soul? The surrender ceremony took place on a neutral station, built quickly between the Valix homeworld and the human fleet. Taehyun returned to his role as diplomat. He looked older now. The weight of war had changed everyone. Admiral Thex Vin came alone. His scales were dull, his movement slow. He looked defeated in every way possible. When he saw Taehyun, he stopped walking. "You warned us," the Valix said quietly, "twice." My brother laughed. I laughed. We all did. "We thought you were weak." Taehyun nodded. "We are not weak. We were kind. There is a difference. Your people confuse the two." Thex Vin looked at the floor. "My people have never encountered kindness paired with strength. We only know domination and submission. You humans are something we cannot understand." "Then learn," Hana said, entering the room. "You have time now. A lifetime to understand what you could not before." The terms of surrender were harsh but necessary. The Valix Empire would be dissolved. All 17 enslaved species would be freed immediately. Felix military forces would be reduced to small defense units only. War criminals, including Warlord Thex Van and Strategic Overseer Krell-Vax, would face trial before a tribunal made up of representatives from every species the Valix had harmed. Most importantly, the Valix would be supervised by a coalition government for at least 50 years. They would learn to live peacefully or face complete dissolution as a species. Admiral Thex Vin signed the documents. His hand shook as he did so. "This is mercy," he asked. "To make us weak? To take away everything we built?" "Yes," Taehyun said firmly, "because the alternative was extinction. We could have destroyed your entire planet. We had the power. We chose not to use it. That is mercy." The Valix Admiral left without another word. He understood finally, but understanding brought no comfort. The liberation of the enslaved species began immediately. Sejin worked with the Tillari to help them reclaim their homeworld. The planet was scarred, damaged by decades of Valix occupation, but it was still home. The Tillari were grateful but cautious. They had been hurt too deeply to trust easily. Sejin understood. She spent weeks just listening to their stories, their pain, their losses. She cried with them often. One day, a young Tillari asked her a question. "Why did humans wait so long? You had this power for years. Why did you not explore the galaxy sooner? If you had, you could have stopped the Valix before they hurt us." The question hurt. Sejin had no good answer. "You are right," she said finally. "We stayed isolated because we were afraid of ourselves. We thought if we stayed separate, we could not hurt anyone. But our isolation meant we could not help anyone either. Back on Earth, humanity struggled with its new reality. They were no longer alone. They were no longer innocent. They were now a military power, whether they wanted to be or not. Dr. Jin-Woo Kwon opened trauma counseling centers across all human colonies. Thousands of people needed help. Soldiers who had killed, civilians who had witnessed death, pilots like Soo Jin who could not sleep without seeing explosions. Hyun Woo, the colonel from New Jeju, came to see Dr. Kwon. He sat in the office, unable to speak for long minutes. Finally, words came out. "I killed 17 Velix soldiers myself," he said. "I shot them, watched them die, and I felt nothing. That is what scares me. I should feel something." But I was empty inside. Dr. Kwon leaned forward. "You were protecting your family, your home. The emptiness you felt was survival instinct. Your mind shut down emotions so you could function. That is normal in combat, but now the combat is over and those emotions are coming back. That is what you are feeling now." Delayed response. Hyunwoo put his face in his hands. "I teach children. I grow vegetables. How can I go back to that life after what I have done, the same way everyone else will?" Dr. Kwon said gently. "One day at a time. With help, with patience, and with the understanding that what you did was necessary, even if it was terrible." President Nam addressed humanity in a broadcast. She stood at a podium looking tired but resolute. "We have learned something about ourselves," she said. "We are capable of great violence. We always were. But we are also capable of great restraint. We used only the force necessary to stop a threat. We could have done so much worse. We chose not to. That choice defines us more than our capacity for destruction." She paused, looking directly at the camera. "But we must also learn from this. Our isolation was a mistake. While we hid from the galaxy, terrible things happened to innocent species. We cannot undo that. But we can prevent it from happening again. From this day forward, humanity will be a guardian, not a hermit. We will use our strength to protect, not to conquer." Not everyone agreed with this new direction. Protests erupted on Earth and the colonies. Some people wanted immediate demilitarization. They argued that keeping weapons meant humanity would eventually use them wrongly. Others argued for the opposite. They wanted humanity to expand, to claim territory, to become powerful. They had seen what happened to weak species in the galaxy. They did not want humans to be victims. General Mira addressed the military debate in a speech to her officers. "Power without wisdom is tyranny. That is what the Velix had, but wisdom without power is vulnerability. That is what the Telari had. We must have both. We must be strong enough to defend ourselves and others, but wise enough to use that strength carefully." Admiral Lee retired after the war. He went to live on a quiet colony world, but young officers still visited him asking for advice. He always told them the same thing. "Every weapon you use, every order you give, remember it could have been different. Remember that war is a failure, but also remember that sometimes failure to fight is worse. Walk that line carefully. It is the hardest thing you will ever do." The Coalition of Free Worlds was established 6 months after the war ended. 17 liberated species joined along with humanity. The coalition had one primary mission: prevent what happened to them from happening to others. Hana became humanity's representative to the Coalition Council. She worked tirelessly to build trust between species. It was slow, difficult work. The scars of the Velix occupation ran deep. At one council meeting, a Brecken representative confronted her. "You humans speak of peace and justice, but you have weapons that terrify us. How do we know you will not become the next Velix?" Hana met his eyes. "You do not know. None of us knows what any species might become. All we can do is watch each other. Hold each other accountable, and remember what happens when power is unchecked. We will prove ourselves through our actions, not our words." The Brecken thought about this. Then he nodded slowly. "Fair enough. We will watch. And we will judge." The trial of Velix war criminals lasted 8 months. Evidence was presented from 17 species. Testimonies from survivors, records of genocide and enslavement. The crimes were overwhelming. Warlord Thexvan showed no remorse. He stood before the tribunal and declared that he had only done what nature demanded. The strong conquer the weak. That is the law of survival. Taehyun, serving as a witness, responded to this. "No. That is the law of animals. Civilization is about rising above base instincts. You had the intelligence to build starships and the cruelty to use them for domination. That is not strength. That is weakness disguised as power. The warlord was sentenced to life imprisonment. So was Krelvax and 43 other Velix leaders. They would spend the rest of their lives in a prison watched by all the species they had harmed. Young Velix, those who had no part in the Empire's crimes, tried to rebuild their society. It was painful work. They had to reject everything their culture had taught them. Many failed. Some could not accept that their ancestors were wrong, but others, like Admiral Thex Vin, worked hard to create something new. A year after the war, Taehyun visited Velixar. He met with Thex Vin in what remained of the former capital. "Are we making progress?" Thex Vin asked. "Yes," Taehyun said honestly. "Slowly, but yes. Your young people are learning. They are questioning. That is the first step. Will we ever be forgiven?" Taehyun considered the question carefully. "Some things cannot be forgiven, but they can be moved past. Your children did not commit these crimes. They should not carry all the guilt. Work toward a future where Velix means something different. That is the only path forward." Thex Vin nodded. "We will try. It is all we can do." 10 years had passed since the war. A full decade of peace. But it was a different kind of peace than humanity had known before. Sujin sat in the pilot seat of a new ship. Not a fighter this time. A transport vessel called the New Dawn. She carried supplies to colony worlds and helped transport refugees from war-torn regions to safer places. Flying still brought her joy, but it was tinged with sadness. She could never forget what she had done during the war. Today she was carrying Tilari children to a new school on a human colony. The children were excited, chattering in their own language. Sujin smiled at them through the cabin window. These were the children of survivors, the next generation that would grow up in peace. One small Tilari came to sit in the co-pilot chair. Sujin had learned enough of their language to communicate. "Are you scared?" the child asked. "My parent says humans are warriors, dangerous." Sujin thought carefully about her answer. "We can be dangerous, yes, but only when we must be. Most of the time, we prefer to help, to build, to teach. Being able to fight does not mean we want to." The child nodded, seeming to understand. "That is good. I do not want more fighting. I want to learn human science. My teacher says humans are very good at solving problems. We are," Sujin said with a smile, "and we will teach you everything we know." On Earth, Taehyun had been appointed as the first galactic coordinator, overseeing all of humanity's relationships with alien species. His hair had turned completely gray. The job was exhausting but important. Today he was preparing for a difficult meeting. A new species had been discovered, the Kethran. They were powerful, technologically advanced, and had a warrior culture similar to the Velix. But they had not attacked anyone yet. They were exploring just as humanity once had. The coalition was nervous. Another aggressive species could mean another war. But Taehyun argued for patience and diplomacy. "We cannot assume all warrior cultures are like the Velix," he told the council. "We must give them a chance to prove themselves." The Kethran ambassador arrived at the orbital station. She was tall, covered in blue scales with intelligent eyes that studied everything. Her name was unpronounceable to humans, so she told them to call her Ava. "I have heard stories about your species," Ava said to Taehyun. "They say you are peaceful but deadly, that you warned the Velix twice before destroying them." "We did not destroy them," Taehyun corrected gently. "We defeated them." "There is a difference. The Velix still exist. They are learning to live peacefully." Ava studied him carefully. "Why did you warn them? Why not strike first?" "Because we wanted to give them a choice," Taehyun said. "War should always be the last option, not the first. We believe in giving others the chance to choose peace." The Kethran ambassador leaned back in her chair. "My people also value strength, but we value honor more. The Velix had no honor. They attacked without warning and enslaved the weak. That is not strength. That is cowardice." Taehyun felt relief wash over him. "Then we will get along well. The coalition welcomes honorable species." The meeting went smoothly after that. The Kethran joined the coalition as observers, promising to follow its rules and principles. It was a small victory, but an important one. Not all powerful species had to be enemies. Hana continued her work as humanity's representative to the Coalition Council. She had become one of the most respected diplomats in known space. Her writings on peaceful coexistence were studied by many species. but she never forgot the price of peace. Every year, on the anniversary of the war's end, she visited a memorial on New Jeju. 8,000 names were carved into black stone. 8,000 civilians who died because the Valix chose violence and humanity chose to respond. Hyun-woo often joined her there. He had returned to teaching, working at the same school that had been rebuilt after the war. His daughter was grown now, a doctor helping to heal the wounds of war. But he still remembered that terrible day when he picked up a weapon. "Do you ever regret it?" Hyun-woo asked Hana one year. "What we did?" "Every day," Hana said quietly. "But regret does not mean it was wrong. Sometimes the right choice still hurts. We did what we had to do. That does not make it easy to live with." The Reaper fleet still existed, but most of the ships were in storage again. Only a small defense force remained active, patrolling coalition space and responding to emergencies. General Mira had retired, but she had trained a new generation of officers. Officers who understood both the necessity of force and the importance of restraint. Taiyang continued to work on military technology, but his focus had shifted. He now led research into defensive systems, shields that could protect without killing, sensors that could detect threats early enough to prevent war entirely. He believed humanity's greatest weapons should be the ones they never had to use. Dr. Jin-Woo Kwon had established the Institute for War Psychology. It was a place where soldiers and civilians from all species could come to heal. The Institute's motto was simple: "We remember so that we can move forward." New species continued to be discovered and welcomed into the coalition. Some were peaceful, some were aggressive at first but learned. Each new member strengthened the network of cooperation that was slowly spreading across the galaxy. And when aggressive species were encountered, humanity had developed a protocol. First, peaceful contact. Second, clear warnings. Third, if necessary, overwhelming force. But always with the goal of peace, not domination. Humanity warned them twice. That phrase had become famous across known space. It was a promise and a threat. Humans would always try diplomacy first. They would always give their opponents a choice. But if that choice was war, humans would win. Decisively. On the 15th anniversary of the war's end, President Nam gave her final speech before retiring. She stood before a crowd of humans and aliens all living peacefully together. "We learned something important 15 years ago," she said. "We learned that peace is not weakness. Kindness is not surrender. Giving warnings is not cowardice. These things are strength. The greatest strength is choosing not to use all the power you have." She paused, looking at the diverse crowd. The Valix laughed at our warnings. They thought we were afraid. They paid a terrible price for that mistake. But we paid a price too. We lost our innocence. We learned that sometimes violence is necessary. That knowledge weighs on us every day. But we also learned that we can carry that weight. We can be strong and kind, powerful and gentle, dangerous and peaceful. These are not contradictions. They are choices. And every day we choose to be better than we could be. The crowd applauded. Among them were Talari, who had been freed from slavery, Brecken, whose worlds were being rebuilt, young Valix who were learning a new way, and humans who had learned that their greatest strength was knowing when to use their power and when to hold it back. Tae-hyun watched the speech from his office. He was training his replacement, a young diplomat named Ji-ho who would take over as Galactic Coordinator. Ji-ho asked him a question. "What if we face another species like the Valix? What if warnings are not enough again?" Tae-hyun looked out at the stars. "Then we will do what we must. But we will always try peace first. Always give them a choice. Because the moment we stop trying, we become what we fought against." That night, Soo-jin docked her ship at a station and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Valix were learning to live peacefully. The Talari were rebuilding. New species were discovering the coalition, and humanity was finding its place in a complex, sometimes dangerous, but ultimately hopeful galaxy. She thought about the war, the people she killed, the fear she felt, and she made peace with it, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. She had done terrible things to protect innocent people. She would carry that burden for the rest of her life. But she would also carry hope. Hope that the next generation would not need to make the choices she made. Hope that the warnings would be heard. Hope that peace could be maintained without constant threat of violence. The stars looked peaceful that night, just as they had 15 years ago. But now humanity knew the truth. Peace was not the absence of danger. It was the choice to respond to danger with wisdom and restraint. To be strong enough to fight but wise enough to avoid it when possible. Humanity had warned them twice. The Velix laughed. The price was deadly. But from that deadly price came a lesson. A lesson that spread across the galaxy. A lesson that might prevent future wars. The lesson was simple. Underestimate kindness at your peril. Mistake gentleness for weakness at your risk. Because sometimes the most dangerous beings are those who choose peace not from inability to fight, but from understanding what fighting truly costs, and humanity would continue to warn. Continue to offer peace, but they would also be ready. Always ready. Because that readiness, combined with the choice not to use it carelessly, was what truly made them strong. The end.